Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series focus on a lawyer bencher candidates. As always, the views and opinions are of the candidates alone. They don't reflect me, Justice and Pieces, Trials College, or any of the other education institutions or organizations that I'm affiliated with. Today we have Stephen joining us. First of all, Stephen, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Perhaps maybe you can start by telling us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I'm Steve Benmor. I was called to the bar in 1994. I'm a certified specialist in family law. I have been practicing family law for the last 30 years. And a little bit about my earlier background. I'm the firstborn Canadian in my family, my parents having come from Iraq and then Israel, with my two sisters who were born in Israel. And so I was the first one in my family that actually was born in Canada and then, of course, became a licensed lawyer in Canada. And so I carry a lot of my family's life experiences, including their struggles and their accomplishments and their achievements with me. And I, like many, went through a circuitous route until I became a lawyer. At one point, I thought I was going to be a dentist, but I made a hard right turn and instead chose to pursue a career in law. And somehow in my earlier years, I was exposed to a significant amount of family law work. And people say, why did you become a family law lawyer? Did you always want to be one? And my answer is quite honestly, no, I didn't think to be a lawyer. I didn't think to be a family law lawyer. It sort of found me. And about 5 to 10 years into my law practice, I realized that I actually was enjoying family law and was enjoying law. And over the years, I've tried to make it a reflection of my own personality and my morals and values. And so here I am now, 30 years later, very happy with the career that I built for myself, the relationship that I have with the colleagues and the judiciary. And in my line of work, a lot of work that we do is in ADR. So I provide mediation services and arbitration and parenting coordination services to people. And I also take a lot of my cases to mediators. And so altogether, I've really enjoyed my journey in law. It's treated me very well, and I have treated it back very well. And I really do believe that many of us come to law from various different backgrounds and disciplines, heritages, religions, nationalities, traditions. And law is a fantastic career to be able to find self-expression and to use one's own life experiences to serve the public and to work in the profession in a way that respects your willingness to give back to the community. And and in my case, I the typical question is why do you want to be a bencher? And in my case, I really want to give back to the profession in a way that is meaningful and respectful of the values that I hold dear to me.
Perfect there. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about why you want to be a bencher and some of those values that you'd like to bring in if elected.
Sure. It comes as no surprise that in society in general, mental health is something that we all think about, from companies as large as Bell Canada and having Mental Health Day to the various organizations that service our clientele with mental health issues. I myself deal with anxiety, and my anxiety at times goes up or down depending on the circumstances that are going on in my professional life and in my personal life. And one thing that I've found to be very common is that many of our colleagues, judges, lawyers, paralegals, and of course our clients are all dealing with mental health issues. And I And I believe that we are now at a place in society where we don't have to be so worried about saying out loud that we have struggles with various issues, whether it's personality issues, mood issues, biochemical issues, whatever it may be that we all are facing. I think we can be very honest and forthright about it, and offer supports to the people around us who are having challenges. And if you yourself have challenges, out it, express it, seek support and at least understanding for it. And so one of the things that I really would like to see the Law Society move in the direction of is creating an environment where we can excel as paralegals and lawyers, while at the same time facing forward with our mental health challenges, and finding a profession that is understanding, accepting, and in fact, even supporting people with their own unique challenges. So one of the things that I found most helpful was former Chief Justice George Stravi recently penned an article about the mental health of lawyers in the legal profession. And I found it to be so enlightening that I bumped into him at an event in the last year, and I did a beeline to him, and I asked him about the article, and we talked about it, and I thanked him for someone that senior, the Chief Justice of Ontario, writing about mental health in lawyers, and how this sort of approach to the gladiator lawyer persona is not what we want to praise. And as a family lawyer myself, and as a mediator myself, I can tell you that there are members of the family law bar who feel that if a lawyer is having difficulties, then the best approach is to try to take him or her down and to make it more difficult for that person to be the lawyer for that particular client. And that, sadly, is counterintuitive, because it actually forces lawyers to exit the profession, and it actually does a disservice to the public. So one of the things that is important to me is leaving a legacy within the Law Society whereby we respect, assist, and facilitate members of our profession with respect to their needs in the field of mental health, and to create an environment where we really can lean on one another, support one another, and definitely not take advantage of one another in that respect. And I'd love to be able to do work, at least in that area, as a bencher. And of course, I have other interests and other concerns that I have in the legal profession, but that's definitely one of my most important priorities.
Now, with that priority, I mean, or with any of the bencher candidates, the independent bencher candidates that I've been talking to and will be talking to, I mean, there is this sort of backdrop that's different about this election as opposed to any election before 2019, to my knowledge, at least, where you have on one side, the Full Stop team that is running essentially with, their main slogan I see is "Stop Bloat, Stop Creep, Stop Woke," and then on the other side you have the Good Governance Coalition that is running essentially saying, the last time there was 22 stop individuals, and if they are all elected again, it's going to be bad for the Law Society. So we're creating our own coalition to run against them and vote for all of us. If you vote for any of the independents, you're diluting your vote type of point. And again, I'm just loosely paraphrasing from the different people I've talked to. But then if we're elected, then we're not going to vote in a block. We're just going to dissolve. Now, as you running independently with sort of this looming over you, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, I guess with slates in general and sort of the temperature of this election with the respective groups that are running with you.
Well, when I became a lawyer in '94, and ever since then, I've always voted in the bencher election. And back in the day, we used to get a booklet, and in the booklet, it listed each lawyer that was running. Back then, there wasn't paralegals that were running, and it would list their history. It would list their education, their charitable work, any sort of volunteer work that they did within and outside of the legal community. And then it would list their platform and what their values were and what they stood for. And that to me spoke to the essence of the candidate. And it was me looking at the candidate and identifying what their values were. Sometimes I voted for people that had very different values than me because I believed that we needed the diversity of the membership in convocation. And I haven't changed in that respect in my views. I actually do believe that in society in general, and in government, and of course in the self-governing entity called the Law Society, in all of the above, what makes it so effective is the diversity of genders, of races, of ages, of professional backgrounds, of historical and personal backgrounds, heritages. The more diverse, in my view, a body that is in the position of authority, the better it is. And so, you asked me about slates. One could say, well, what do you think about political parties? Should a person be part of a slate or a political party? I think each candidate should decide what their values, what their goals, what their concerns are. And if they happen to share very similar values, concerns, and objectives of someone else, and if they want to run with them, if they want to run with a group of people, and they want to call that a slate, that's their choice. And if somebody doesn't want to participate, but they actually have similar values, but they want to run on their own, like I am, I think that's ultimately their decision. That at the end of the day, I don't think anybody should be voting because of a slate. I think we should first encourage people to vote, period. And then once we get somebody who's agreed to vote, and as we know, something like 3 out of 4 lawyers don't vote, or haven't, at least in the last few elections, which is a problem. But if we can get the 3 out of 4 that don't vote to vote, and we get them to look at the slate of candidates and to ascertain their values and their objectives and their wishes, and if that is something that the voter supports, the voter votes for them. And if it happens to be because that candidate is part of a slate or a group, so be it. I'd be happier that somebody voted for a slate than not vote at all. Because really what I'm interested in is the engagement of the profession. I want lawyers to be engaged and to be supportive of their organization. And this crazy thing is a lot of lawyers very much have strong social justice views. They became lawyers because they wanted to improve society, advance the role of the rule of law, and improve the fabric of our nation. And that's why they became lawyers. And the same people, about 3/4 of them, don't vote in the election. So really, slate or no slate, I would be much more interested in people just becoming engaged, becoming interested, volunteering in whatever organization they can. And if it comes to the subject of voting, of course, cast a vote that reflects their own views, values, and wishes.
Now, in terms of afterwards, right, there'll be the results, I think May the 1st, and I think May the 25th is the first convocation of the newly constructed the benchers, but again, the board of directors, really. And you mentioned, mental health there, and kind of how would you see being able to bring some of that to convocation if elected, depending on the makeup of, again, like what we've been talking about, it could be predominantly one slate. It could be predominantly the other slate, other coalition. It could be a mix. It could be a lot more independents right now. And you were reflecting back in 1994, right, that you'd get these booklets, and I believe there'll still be like a PDF to come soon that kind of does the same thing. But how, in terms of working where you'll have people with different views potentially, to show the importance of taking care of mental health in the profession and trying to work and get things moving forward?
So it's a good question. So the Law Society has standing committees and ad hoc committees. And anybody that's watching this can easily Google the Law Society's various committees and see. The issue of mental health is both a standalone issue and one that bleeds into the policy setting within various committees. And so to the extent that there is and ought to be and monitored a mental health policy that is something that is an active pursuit of convocation of the Law Society, that's number one. And by the way, in the past and now, the Law Society does have initiatives with respect to mental health. And it's not that they're not addressing it. They are addressing it. I just want to be a proponent, a voice, and a torchbearer to improve it, to continue it, to expand it, and to be responsive to the needs of the profession. So that's with respect to an actual active pursuit. Number two is the more benchers feel comfortable about outing the subject of mental health and speaking about it publicly, the more we can cause members of the profession to not keep it hidden, but to actually share it with their staff, share it with their colleagues. The more it becomes something that is just no different than someone saying, you know what, it's Ramadan today and I haven't eaten all day long. And so pardon me for being a little shady in my submissions today. Something as comfortable as that, but on the subject of mental health. So there's the influencer part of benchers who feel strongly about the subject of mental health and the need for there to be better supports and recognition. Thirdly, on various committee work, both ad hoc and standing, there oftentimes is a component to the policy setting that may benefit from a consideration of the mental health aspect to it. And so when you carry that lens through which you see the impact of various policies, it tends to influence the decision-making at the committee level and then later at the convocation level. So to sum up, there's active mental health policies. There is the role of benchers who tend to demonstrate to the profession the need for there to be a comfort level in disclosing and seeking assistance and support for mental health issues. And thirdly, decisions that are being made by committees and convocation that will very much be informed by a mental health dimension.
Now, moving on from mental health, Steve, I know being a family lawyer and I teach paralegal students and hear from a lot of, even the paralegal bencher candidates, about family law in terms of the FLSP that was announced in December. And again, varying thoughts within the profession of, where's the role of paralegals, especially in this area. So I don't know if maybe you can kind of discuss that, because I know at least the paralegals, students and paralegals that are listening are always interested in knowing what family lawyers have to say about what their role may be in that area, or as well as in other areas too.
So if we start from what is the problem that we're trying to fix? So the problem that we're trying to fix is a very big problem in Ontario. And the very big problem in Ontario that we're trying to fix is that 3 out of 4 people that are splitting up and divorcing are not using any legal assistance. And so we have, as we speak right now, an epidemic in terms of access to justice. And so the question is, why is it that people that are splitting up are not using lawyers? And the answer is because it's too expensive, because legal aid isn't adequate, because the amount of money that a lawyer charges for representing a person through separation and divorce, a person might have to work a whole day for 1 hour, or a whole week in some cases for 1 hour of a lawyer's time. And so they can't afford it. And some of these people are victims of violence. Some of these people have mental health or physical disabilities. Some of these people do well. They may have a very good income, but they're involved in a very high conflict divorce, which will bankrupt them if they hire a lawyer. And so when it comes to the problem is access to justice and the small number of people that are using lawyers to handle their divorce. In society, somewhere between 30 to 60% of people are splitting up and ending their relationship. So we have a very large segment of society that needs the help. We have that segment who is not accessing the help that they can get. And interestingly, we are in a society where there is plenty of service available. This is not a situation where there's a lack of lawyers or paralegals that could service the people that are in need of this help. So we have the supply side abundant. We have the demand side abundant, but we have this disconnect. So about 10 years ago, Anne-Marie Boncala was assigned the task, Chief Justice Anne-Marie Boncala was assigned the task of studying the subject matter and making recommendations. And the Boncala report revealed that there needs to be some changes made, one of which, not all of them, but one of the recommendations was to allow non-lawyers to be able to provide services, at least for some of the basic divorce services that are needed. And that's precisely what the Law Society studied for the last few years, and recently passed a motion to allow paralegals to get trained in order to provide a very limited scope of divorce services to the public. And now, sometimes there's the headline and then there's the article. So the headline has obviously bent some people's noses out of shape, but the actual underlying component to it, i.e. the article, really isn't anything that's worthy of consideration or consternation about. Because the kind of work that paralegals will be doing, at least in this early stage, is work that many lawyers don't even do. They pass it on to law clerks or paralegals within their own office. And so if a paralegal is retained by a person who happens to have received the family law service provider license after having, spent the time and the money to get properly trained, educated, accredited, and insured, I think most lawyers would support the idea that the sort of work that they themselves don't do, or if they do it, is not really within their wheelhouse of the kind of work that they like to do. And this is something that can be done by a paralegal. I think we as a society should encourage that. We as a profession should encourage it. And in fact, nothing can be better than to take small steps before we run, or to start in the shallow end before we get to the deep end. And that's precisely what the Law Society approved with the family service provider licenses. Let's try this out within a limited scope basis, see how it goes, collect data, study the empirical data, and then decide where do we go from here. And that's one of the reasons why I want to be a bencher, is because I have an open mind to this subject, and I'd like to see how this plays out. And if it plays out successfully, then we could expand the scope of service. And should it not be working successfully, let's identify why and maybe correct it before we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because at the end of the day, I believe this firmly. There will always be a need for lawyers, and there will always be a need for family law lawyers. the question really is the division of responsibilities between the various people within the service provision community. And so, for example, myself and in my own office, I have people that do financial statements. I have people that do the comparative net family property statements. I have people that do the intake for the purposes of determining what is the best parenting schedule for the children. I have people that provide services in my office for uncontested divorces. So in my little family law boutique firm, I already have an allocation of services by various people within my little firm. Well, that's a reflection of the needs of society in general. And so why not have the Law Society regulate this, educate it, monitor it, and provide greater service to Ontarians with respect to separation and divorce to tackle the problem that has existed for many, many years, which is that people that are going through this horrific stage in their life are doing it without any help, where we are here and we can help.
Now, Steve, no, we've talked about it, those couple of areas there. I want to know if there's anything else in terms of issues or in your platform, again, in the public interest as the mandate for the Law Society and the benchers. Anything else you want to touch on that would be important for those making a decision to vote in the upcoming election?
Sure, John Paul. Well, you've already done a good job getting me to explain my strongly held views with respect to access to justice, particularly in the field of family law and divorce law. Secondly, my strong views about mental health and my hope to be able to move the profession in the right direction vis-a-vis that issue. And the third thing that I hold dear is the value that I have given to my clients over the last 20-ish of the last 30 years of my law practice as a specialist in the field of family law. And when the Law Society made the decision last year to wind up and terminate the certified specialist program, I, like many certified specialists, were concerned not about us, because at this point in time, whether I have those two letters after my name or not, most members of the profession identify with me as an expert in the field of family law. So it wasn't about the certified specialists. It was about the public. And me and many other certified specialists, and in fact, many non-certified specialists, all believe that the public is better served by having a certified specialist program run by the Law Society so that they can identify who they can go to should they require that expertise. Well, good news is the Law Society responded to our concerns and reversed their decision to wind up the program at the end of last year. And so we are now in a place where it's going to be discussed, debated, and decided again. And so above and beyond my concerns regarding mental health and access to justice, my third concern is that we preserve the certified specialist program, we fortify it, and we use it as a mechanism to better serve the public. And so that is the third leg of my personal wish list as a bencher. And of course, lastly, oftentimes people say, what's your platform? What are your goals? My real goal, above and beyond those three, is to bring balance, neutrality, open-mindedness, and reason to all of the discussions that occur at convocation and at the committee level, and to not be beholden to one view or one attitude or one philosophy, but to bring reason, rationale, and balance to any and all decisions that we need to make as benchers.
Now, Steve, the last couple of questions here. I know you had some experience earlier in your career teaching students, and I have a number of my paralegal students that may be listening and learning about all the different candidates. Wondering if you have any words of wisdom or advice for them as they look to enter into the profession.
First of all, I would say this to high school students thinking about law. I would say this to university students thinking about either going and doing their paralegal certificate or their law degree. And I would say this to anybody that's coming to this country with high hopes, who happens to have a law degree from another country, and them going through the National Center for Accreditation in Ottawa and ultimately to be a practicing lawyer in Ontario. Welcome. Welcome, because it's a great profession. We've got smart, committed, charitable people that are in our profession, both paralegals and lawyers. And I love hearing from new lawyers and new paralegals who oftentimes reach out to me for advice and guidance. In the last few years, COVID and the use of Zoom hearings have made it easier for me to allow some of the people that I mentor to watch me in action and to learn skills from me actually running trials, motions, or mediations. So I say to the next generation of people that are entering our profession, welcome. Come in with high hopes and ambitions, connect with other members of the profession, volunteer, become active. Of course, be committed to your family and your own practice, but don't stop there. Be part of the profession, volunteer in the profession, do pro bono work where you can, if you can, and find friendship in the profession, much like I have. Many of my close friends I've acquired through this profession, and so it's a great profession, and we will welcome you with open arms. But it's a two-way street. You can't just give, you can't just take. You have to give, and it will make for a very happy and fulfilling career.
Perfect. So, Steve, last question here for any lawyers that are listening. I mean, well, I guess myself included, that have 40 votes. Why should they use one vote and cast it for you?
So you're touching on a very sensitive issue. You know, every person who has the right to vote can vote 40 times. And for those people that use all of their 40 votes, use them judiciously, because each one of them will have an effect. For those of you that are uncertain as to some of your choices, don't feel the need to use each one of your votes if you can't find candidates that meet your values and your ambitions for your ventures. Because if you cast votes in an uninformed way, you could ultimately be compromising the outcome of the election in a way that you did not intend to. So look at the candidates, look at their objectives, look at their values, and of course, look at their history and their stated commitments, and cast your votes accordingly. And if it happens that you cast 40 votes, good on you. I would much rather you vote and cast 40 votes than not vote at all. And if you happen to find less than 40 people that match your interests and your philosophy, use the votes that you decide to use. But definitely the most important issue, and for those of you that are watching this video, vote. And if you are watching this video and you know people that don't vote, turn to them and say, you know what, you've got another couple days to vote. You really should vote, because it is incumbent on all of us to be engaged in our profession and to influence the outcome of the future of the profession. And the best way to do that is by choosing the ventures that will set the policies that will govern us as lawyers and paralegals, and ultimately influence the public good.
Perfect. So once again, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I wish you all the best, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Take care.
Thank you.